Who really killed President John Kennedy? I'm not asking who fired the shots, how many assassins were there, but who made the decision to kill Kennedy, and who said he needed to die, and why was that decision made? Did Pope John Paul I die a natural death, or was he killed? David Yallop wrote a book called In God's Name, and in the book he presents very well documented facts that John Paul I was murdered because he attempted to investigate the workings of the Vatican Bank and to replace its leadership and key officials throughout the United States and Europe who made the bank and its workings possible. In turn, the Vatican hired somebody to refute David Yallop, and the best that he could come up with was that Pope John Paul I died of benign neglect. They did not give him his medicine. Well, he was an old enough man to take his own medicine. He didn't need somebody to give him his medicine. The one trying to refute Yallop never said that the Pope died naturally with no human intervention. He died of benign neglect. The novel Restoring the Commonwealth is based on several well-documented facts that are never really put together, but are treated as isolated events. And some of these facts are that after World War I and World War II, major international banks were set up. Each of these banks pushed the idea, or pushed the USA into vast expenditures of money, which helped make the United States of America a debtor nation. Both banks were controlled by remnants of the Nazis. The Vatican Bank assisted in the process of Nazi control, assisted in the removal of Nazis to the United States and to South America after World War II. Major U.S. industries reaped huge profits from the sale of arms to the Nazis and after the war to the United States and other nations. After World War II, the OSS, which later became the CIA, was led by Nazis, whom the CIA, the Vatican Bank, the international banks, and a few major U.S. industries were able to place in control. In June 1963, President John Kennedy attempted to take the U.S. dollar out of the control of the international banks and place it under the control of the U.S. government, something that our Constitution mandated. That process, like the reform of the Vatican Bank, never happened once Kennedy was killed. Although John Kennedy and Pope John Paul I, who lived 15 years apart, or at least reigned 15 years apart, they're treated in the novel as contemporaries in order to show the connection between the two of them. The novel also looks at all of these developments through the eyes of Native Americans who maintain that the elements which bring so much profit to industry and are the cause of war cannot be owned. The water, the earth, the air, the land, the trees, the heat and light produced by the sun are common wealth. 2 words. We have created the commonwealth, a single word, which usually refers to the government, which is allowed to own these elements that are natural, and they own them often for the benefit of the large corporations. The novel also contains an epilogue which describes contemporary events usually undertaken by very common people that are helping to bring back a sense that the natural elements are really our common wealth. 2 words. The novel points out that many of the Nazis were later taken to Bolivia after World War II. An interesting event brought out in the epilogue is that recently Bolivia was the first nation in the world to actually incorporate in its law and point out that the natural elements, the water, the earth, the air, the land, the trees, the heat and the light from the sun, have an inherent right to life, which means that human beings may not do anything to destroy them. The same philosophy advocated by the Native Americans in the early chapters of this novel.